Professional sports is one of the sacred ceremonies of society. Throughout history, the ritual of competition has been front and center in all cities and communities for entertainment and inspiration. It also has been a large revenue source for many cities. As the money goes up, so does athlete compensation.
We need to readjust our mindset when we look at this Saudi Arabia situation, with the PGA, with soccer, with all these huge contracts. Our brains are trained to think involuntarily that there has to be some limit to what they can spend, whatever that is. Right. That's clearly not the case. They have unlimited funds. They have come in and said, we'll offer you 700 million euros to play for 1 year, and they would pay PSG 300 million euros for a transfer fee. So they are investing $1 billion in 1 year of Kylian Mbappe.
That's crazy.
There's just no limit to their financial power. This is sports washing at its finest.
Currently, across the world, the most elite athletes to ever walk this earth are now earning money upwards and over the $1 billion mark. Golfers, racers, soccer, and basketball players all have been able to reach this milestone.
Greeny, there are a lot of different layers to it. First of all, we're in a pandemic. Patrick Mahomes is worth the richest contract in sports, and he's now secure, and the children of his children's children should be secure. So from that standpoint, Patrick Mahomes got everything that he should have. He deserved every penny. And at a time where the NFL is poised to move forward with a new media rights deal with huge numbers that are expected to come into the NFL on its TV contracts and all those sorts of negotiations, these numbers could go way up. And Patrick Mahomes is locked in place before that deal gets done at record numbers for him.
Let's use the 12 years, which when you include the extension is basically how long he's locked in for now. If you were to go backwards 12 years, the highest paid quarterbacks were Peyton Manning and Brett Favre at roughly $12 million a year. So the quarterback market has basically tripled in that period of time. If you were to do that math, he's obviously going to wind up getting a lot less than that going forward.
His Heirness himself, Michael Jordan, is leading the pack of athletes at being worth $3.3 billion. While he made a lot of money from his playing salary and endorsements, these big numbers mostly come from his former team ownership of the Charlotte Hornets Pro Basketball team. But now, some of these modern-day sports contracts are reaching levels that compare with sports franchise ownership. In today's world, these numbers are staggering and incomprehensible when you think about the real utilitarian value of an athlete to the benefit of the world. But when looking back at ancient history in Rome, MJ's net worth is chump change compared to the person that holds the title of richest athlete of all time. Chariot racer Gaius Appuleius Diocles, who is said to be worth over $15 billion, relatively speaking, during the later half of the ancient Roman Empire.
The man who is probably the most famous and successful charioteer in history, Gaius Appuleius Diocles. Diocles was born in the Roman province of Lusitania, in what is now Lamego, Portugal, in the year 104. He began chariot racing when he was 18 in what is today Lleida in Catalonia, Spain. The biggest sport in ancient Rome wasn't gladiatorial games, despite the fact that they are what get the most attention in movies. They were popular to be sure, but the number of spectators that could sit in an amphitheater like the Colosseum was very limited. And given the nature of the activity, you couldn't really do it every day. The big sport was chariot racing. Chariot racing was huge, and in Rome itself, the primary venue for racing was the Circus Maximus, which could hold 250,000 people. You can still see where the Circus Maximus was located today, and you can still see the outline of the track.
Chariot racing in the ancient world is most akin to modern Formula One.
Come on! What the hell?
This will be interesting. I think Russell momentarily loses a little bit of grip as well and washes wide. Oh, barely.
But these were exceptionally short races compared to the modern sport. Careers and lives hinged on the 10 to 15 minutes spent on the track. There wasn't room for error. One mistake and the race would be over for the charioteer. It was routine for charioteers to race multiple times per week, sometimes in a single day during holidays.
When the poet Juvenal spoke of appeasing the masses with bread and circuses, chariot racing was what he was talking about. Just to give an overview of Roman chariot racing, the common people and many aristocrats were fanatical about the sport. The chariots were divided up into teams: the red, the white, the green, and the blue. Each team would usually have 3 chariots in each race. On race day, there would have been 24 races consisting of 7 laps each, and the majority of races were with quadrigas, which are teams of 4 horses. There were an average 66 days a year that had races. They would usually be organized by aediles, which was an elected position. An aedile that did a good job organizing games would have their name known by the public, and it would help them eventually achieve higher offices such as consul. Individual charioteers were recruited by teams and would win prizes based on their performance. Only charioteers placing in the top 3 would earn prize money.
Romans certainly had 2-horse chariot races, but they were junior league. The real Grand Prix was the 4-horse race. The Circus Maximus was a theatre. It was sporting entertainment. And it delivered spectacle in 3 ways: majesty, supremacy, and jeopardy.
So why did Diocles make so much money? For starters, Diocles was good. Really good. He was the winner or runner-up in 75% of the races in his career. And remember, you only got paid if you were in the top 3. However, he had something else going for him: showmanship. What he often did is let himself get behind on the last lap, so he could then overtake the leader in a dramatic finish. He would do this all the time and became quite good at it. The crowds would go nuts, which drew more people, which resulted in larger purses. Because there were 24 races in a day, he could easily bring in as much money in a single day as a Roman procurator could make in a year. The other secret to his success was longevity. And I mean this in the most literal sense. The life expectancy of a charioteer was very short. One famous charioteer named Scorpus won over 2,000 races, which is more than Diocles. However, he died at the age of 27 during an in-race collision. If you want an idea of how dangerous chariot racing was, just watch the race scenes from any of the 3 versions of Ben-Hur, preferably the 1959 version. The chariot racers literally had their wrists tied to the reins of the horses, and if there was a crash, they could be dragged around the track by their team. Diocles managed to have a 24-year career without any major accidents.
Diocles averaged between 3 to 4 races per week for the length of his career. Porphyrius, the charioteer, arguably the most decorated charioteer in Roman history, had 374 wins attributed to him. While that's a far cry from Diocles, he did something Diocles didn't: win the Diversium. This entailed winning for one team, then changing teams mid-day and winning again, this time racing for the team in last place. It was considered the highest honor in the charioteering world, and Porphyrius was hailed for doing it twice in a single day. So while Diocles was the most prolific charioteer in history, at least in Rome, he wasn't regarded as the greatest. Diocles was a volume charioteer, which was very difficult in its own right, but didn't earn the same level of quote-unquote greatness ascribed to others.
In the end, he won 1,462 races and took second place in 1,438 more, out of a total of 4,257 races he competed in. His total career winnings were 35,863,120 Roman sesterces. Trying to make comparisons in wealth from ancient periods to today is extremely difficult to near impossible. Populations were different, productivity has improved exponentially, and what you could buy with your money was totally different. However, we do know that Diocles was unquestionably one of the richest people in Rome when he retired. His wealth was only surpassed by a few senators and the emperor himself. He had enough money to feed all of Rome for a year, or pay for the entire Roman military for several months. Using these purchasing power comparisons, it's estimated that his fortune would be worth around $15 billion today. When he retired at the age of 42, he purchased a villa in the Italian countryside and retired. And from there, he vanished from history. The only reason we know so much about Diocles as we do was because of his fame and success on the track. So the next time you hear of some athlete making an obscene amount of money, just remember that they still can't hold a candle to the richest athlete of all time, Gaius Appuleius Diocles.
Diocles and the wealth he amassed in his career in connection to the world of 2023 may seem separate, but connect together in a staggering way, because history always repeats itself. And the key word is inflation. Unlike most athletes today, wanting to be regarded as kings and royalty, Gaius didn't desire a world of high society. He could have funded an army if he wanted to. He could have bought huge tracts of land or been a patron of the arts. He could have commissioned epic poems to be written in his honor. He could have ordered lavish sculptures and statues to cement his place in history and ensure his legacy resonates throughout the centuries. But he didn't. Though he had the means to, it wasn't common for athletes to do so. In the Roman Empire, the prospect of spending as much money as Diocles earned was far more difficult. There was the concept of land ownership, but wealth was more of a social status indicator than something to be spent. In order to become a member of the Roman Senate during the imperial era, a prospective senator would, barring intervention from the emperor, need to be of senatorial class, i.e., be the son of a senator, and have 1 million sesterces on hand. Generally speaking, this was the pinnacle of aspirations for a Roman citizen. But unless Diocles somehow managed to find favor with the emperor, it was out of his grasp despite his wealth. We must remember athletes are paid to entertain and not to be taken at their word authoritatively. They may be able to afford much, but they are not in powerful positions like one may think. Most athletes were paid handsomely, but were still considered slave class. Instead, he largely escaped the public eye after retiring from racing and retreated into seclusion on his land in Latium.